Oh boy, here comes the fun cooker.
Check out my fun cooker!
Hello friends and welcome back to ReddX, your source for the freshest daily Reddit content anywhere on the internet. Promise, swearsies, it's just a fact and it's totally science. Go ahead and look it up. Today we're jumping into r/Tales of Neckbeards, continuing the TBOATI saga. We are now on part number 6. The previous parts are down in the description if you've missed them. And it's a relatively interesting read. It's all about a writing coach, and I actually learn a lot about, being a good writer, and also how not to be a neckbeard. But we learn how to not be a neckbeard every single day, so you'd think eventually the lessons would start to sink in, and you might be wrong about that. Considering how I tend to live my life. But this ain't about me. So let's get some plugs and disclaimers out of the way, and then we will jump into some TBOATI, aka the Beard of 1,000 Irritations, cringe. The Beard of 1,000 Irritations, boundary dodging. Hi everyone, and welcome to part 6 of my experiences with the Beard of 1,000 Irritations, or TBOATI for short. If you've only just joined us, then you're welcome to read or listen to the series from the beginning. Part number 1, as I might have mentioned, in the description. TBOATI's a sci-fi fan, working on his own original world, and has been hiring me, a writing coach, to help him with his world building development and get his story written and posted online. This has been pretty frustrating at times, and I'm letting off some steam by writing about this. I've changed a few details to protect both the innocent and the bearded. Here's our cast list. OP, yup, she in here. TBOATI, yup, also in here, unfortunately. A few people in here have also pointed out that I could have had an easier time with TBOATI if I'd maintained stricter boundaries with him. That much is true, but I didn't. Partly because I'm prone to falling for the occasional manipulation, just like we all do, and partly because most of my clients are happy to just say a little about how their life is going, and then move on with their lives. I like to provide a service that's almost like visiting a cafe, where you get to have a nice little bit of conversation, along with the service that you came for. It makes for a nice, personable atmosphere. At least, it does for my more well-adjusted clients. For beards and nice guys, that situation is ripe for exploitation. And I can't always tell whether someone's a beard or a nice guy until we've talked for a while and we're already in the dynamic. Thankfully, I'm over my inhibitions about the social awkwardness of going against the grain once I realize what's up. So the only choice that I have to make is whether I want to risk losing the income they bring by putting my foot down, which is a pretty big consideration, but heyo. Money talks, I'll tell you that. You put up with a lot of stuff for money. But come on, just look at it as like clearing up your schedule. Now I can get somebody who will pay me and not be a weirdo about it. But anyways, on to TBOATI. He liked to mix business and pleasure. Which is to say that it has always been exceedingly difficult to maintain a purely working relationship with him. Just by being casually friendly to him, he seemed to assume that we are legitimate friends. I haven't had occasion to tell him that we're not, and I suspect that he would feel upset if I did, but I have had to say no to simple chatting many times. Once he asked me if I had worked on / read his project outside of paid for time, and I said no. Duh. I forget his answer, but I was surprised that it wasn't obvious to him. This is the same guy that hits on the checkout girl at the counter at the grocery store because she smiled at him or something like that. Like, understand that these women are just trying to do their job and leave them alone. If they are interested in anything outside of work, I'm sure they would tell you. But for the vast majority of cases, that's not going to happen. So just drop it. Actually, I think he may have been wondering whether I researched his world, so that we could work efficiently once his paid-for time started. But even if he did, he didn't seem to be interested in paying for the extra time that all that would have taken me. Here's another story that I posted about a different beard who thought that I should put extra time into his project for free. And that's part of the Brat Beard posts, which I'm sure we'll get into eventually. But it fits right in with the self-entitlement, the delusions of grandeur. Does it not? I don't know why all beards are cut from the same cloth, but here at ReddX Industries, we are trying to get down to the root of the problem. We got a long way to go. He had ways of blurring the boundaries between casual chat and discussions of the big problems in his life. One of them was exactly that, his use of the word chat. TBOATI would often ask me if I was around on Telegram, and I'd say yes, because perhaps he actually wanted me to do some legitimate paid work. But then he'd tell me that he wanted to chat. Early on in the working relationship, I'd say something like, sure, what's up? And flick between reading and responding to his Telegram DMs and whatever other work I was doing. To me, a chat is a light conversation, and I think that's the prevailing idea of what people take it to mean. So I generally believe that if someone says they want to chat, then they're going to keep it light. Yeah, but that's how they loop you in. They say it's just a chat when in actuality it's a discussion. God, words are so funny. There's like so much subtext. TBOATI used the word chat for conversation that he wanted to have when he was bored, but also when he wanted to tell me all about his latest crisis. So I had this experience multiple times, and by the time I realized what was going on, he'd already begun to unpack his problems on me. Since then, I've adopted chat as a trigger word. Yeah, I feel that. If someone tells me they want to chat, then I'm on guard to work out quickly whether it'll be light or heavy. And I found that asking explicitly which it will be does help. He wised up to that too. Or perhaps he took that question to be an invitation in itself. If it was a heavier conversation, then he wouldn't answer my question with heavy. He'd just start telling me about the problem. I'm not listening or responding to you, but you listen or respond to me, okay? Also, you're not getting paid for this. Bro, go take a flying leap. The only response he should get should be like a link to your work schedule calendar. You want to chat about this? I'll try and pencil you in, asshole. I ended up listening and responding a couple of times, and these talks could take around an hour. When I recognized that this was a pattern, I suggested to him that he visit an actual therapist to talk these issues through. I mean, he clearly had the budget for it, judging by the money that he had spent on working with me. He said, "I have no words," and then, "I'll think about it." Either he never did, or he never told me about it. I mentioned the idea of therapy again relatively recently, and he said he hadn't tried. What a shocker. Why pay for a therapist when you're getting it for free? Writing coach / therapist. Oh, God. He tried to get around my boundary setting by telling me that when I listened to his problems, I helped him put them into perspective. I've since learned that he has a pattern of overstepping boundaries and then dishing out compliments to encourage that person to feel good about themselves for giving him some special treatment. He did the same when he failed an exam and blasted his examiners to me. I never knew whether they genuinely treated him unfairly or not, so I didn't respond about the actual issue, but it was hard to be sympathetic with TBOATI by this point. He also did the same thing when he got his first job. As he told it, the computer program the company used didn't work properly, so he couldn't do the work they hired him to do. He was left on his own on day 2 to work, and he was forced to act like a cross between a robot and a butler. How the hell are you supposed to respond to that? Did you tell your boss, or did you just sit on your fat ass for 2 days getting paid? If there's a problem, make somebody aware of it. That is so simple. What are you doing? He irritates me too. Some of these stories he irritates me way more than others, but man, he's grinding my gears today. I didn't respond much about that either, except to say that customer service is a part of many jobs nowadays, and that he might want to learn to get comfortable with it. Being a butler for a company is more or less expected. After me responding in this vein for a while, he realized I wasn't going to be sympathetic, or at least not as sympathetic as he would have liked me to be, and he stopped trying. Thank God. He forwarded their email to me to show me that they'd terminated his contract after 2 days, and it said something about them terminating due to multiple complaints about his performance. I can't say I was surprised, honestly, but he really must have been bad at the job to have been written off so quickly. Just facts. 2 days, bro? God damn, you're not even like through the training period at that point, are you? Wild. When I firmed up my boundaries again, TBOATI tried a new strategy of telling me that he had a big issue to talk about one day. He got a no from me, and then he came back the following day saying it was even more urgent now, and he just couldn't wait to tell someone. When that happened, I pointed out again that having a therapist would be preferable, and I disentangled myself from the conversation ASAP. I love to see OP's learning process. She's just like, oh no, I know what's gonna happen next. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That's rich, man. That pretty much covers his approach to me being his personal Samaritan's call handler, but I have a few other examples of when he either ignored or generally had a poor idea of boundaries. One of them was to do with the reports that I write. The main value my business provides is insight, which is generated by the discussions that I have with my clients, so I usually write those down and present my clients with a report after our consultations. Those insights can be anything from in-universe stuff to help with their world building or how they manage or promote their projects. The world building ones can get quite long for complex or large projects. My reports have a format, and I have a template document. I don't routinely send this template to my clients, obviously, and instead I'll discuss my clients' support needs and questions with them, write the report in my own words, and then present it to them. I do this for copyright reasons. I want copyright of my reports to remain mine, to reduce the potential for intellectual property issues later on. TBOATI didn't like that. After everything else, let me tell you how to run your business. All right, bro, you take it over. Seems like you know what you're doing. Just handle it. Just make sure I get my cut, right? He liked seeing my reports for his world and story and found that they helped him generate more ideas. But somehow he went from liking those to feeling like he couldn't do his world building work any other way. He asked me to send him an empty template so that he could work. The first time he asked me this, I said no, for the above IP related reason, and he told me that he thought that was exploitative of me, and I told him that I didn't appreciate that. Bro, maybe he is actually trying to take your job right here. The problem is it's more about the insight that is offered rather than a neato template. God, imagine paying TBOATI as a writing coach. You might as well set your money on fire. His powerlessness in that situation was confusing to me. I figured it should be obvious to him that the templates hadn't just dropped from heaven into my lap, ready-made. I'd taken the time to make them, and that if he liked having a format to work to, then perhaps he might want to make his own. I didn't want to give him the idea, as that would help to render me redundant, but since he claimed to be taking a project management role for his project, figured that if he wanted a set format that much, he could come up with his own. I don't think that he ever made his own template. I don't think this dude ever does anything. He talks about grand ideas that'll never happen, and he eats and shits, and probably sleeps. That's TBOATI in a nutshell. Another example of his poor understanding of boundaries was about my finances. I regret ever mentioning this to him, because in hindsight, this was an invitation for him to step over yet another boundary. But about 18 months ago, I started applying for grants. I casually mentioned this to TBOATI during a casual conversation, a casual chat, if you will, as I was proud of having successfully made my first application. He made a show of being very happy for me, more so than whenever I showed him anything else, such as new entries on my blog. Whenever I showed him those things, he just responded with reserved politeness. But he was actively enthusiastic about me getting a grant. He pointed out that if I got one, then I could make my service as cheap as it had been when I first started the business by subsidizing it with my grant. Oh, that's why he's excited. He's looking for what's in it for him. Like I didn't see this coming a mile away. Boy. I mainly derailed this discussion by drawing attention to how I could hire a salesperson, which was what I had been intending to do. He took the bait and didn't stick to his "for the clients" thread too much, thankfully, but his presumption about how I should spend my grant money stuck with me, as it should. I have one more boundary issue to bring up here, and then I'll be done. I'm on Patreon. One of my tier rewards is a set period of time that you can use each month to have me critique whatever project you want to share with me. It's not very much time, and the entire point of the tier is to give people a low-cost way of getting a little taster of my services. It's ideal for small pieces of work, but it would be frustratingly slow to use on bigger projects. That's half the point, to encourage people to upgrade as soon as they know what working with me is like. TBOATI pledged, and then asked me if I'd be happy to give him several months' worth ahead of time so that he could get me to do a reasonably big chunk of work in one go. I'm not happy at myself because I accepted this. Oh, OP, come on. You can cancel Patreon at any time. There's no lock-in period, okay? So why did OP accept? Because TBOATI is many things, but at least he is sincere, so I believed that he would keep his pledge in place for long enough to pay for the work. He did. Well, that's a victory, at least. But I wouldn't do it personally. Nuh-uh. However, I pointed out that keeping track of his rate of payment was an extra stress that I didn't want. So he suggested that I keep a spreadsheet of who was pledged and what they had owed or had taken. I didn't like having to keep tabs on that. Plus 2 or 3 other people wanted to do similar things with their tier rewards because it was already an inefficient way for me to earn money. So having extra admin to do on top of everything else tipped it over into just not being worthwhile to me. Eventually, I installed a new rule that people had to use up their rewards on the month or lose them. No rollover minutes. TLDR, Neckbeard wants his writing coach to also be his therapist and tries every trick under the sun to make it happen. Rants on Telegram about failing his exams and getting sacked from his first job after 2 days. Decides that the only way he can possibly work is by using my working templates. He commandeers a grant that I hadn't even won to subsidize himself, and generally tries to get some freebies. Not the worst TBOATI story, honestly. Most of the really bad TBOATI stuff is like, sexual in nature. This is just the kind of stuff that grinds you down to a little nub. Even just reading through the story, I'm like, oh no. I can feel my soul being slowly chipped away. I don't know how you did that, OP. Honestly, I've said before you have the patience of a saint. I've said before that I would have blocked this guy within like the first few hours of talking to him. But money does talk, you know. I just don't think it talks that loudly for me to be able to sit there and pretend to care about all this inconsequential shit. Like, man, just leave me alone. You want to talk about losing your job and crap like that? Schedule a time, okay? I hate to make it all about the money, you know. If you were a pleasant person to talk to, if I felt like this relationship was a two-way street with good back and forth, then I might swing it, you know, I'd be into it. But it seems like all he does is take, and oh God, it just wears a hole right through the very core of me. Even being told secondhand. Oh, I'm gonna go ahead and shove another TBOATI in here, because why not? We'll make a nice big beefy episode for today. I'm feeling extra motivated, extra hungry to record some content. And you guys shall reap the rewards. So thank you for watching this far. Let's get into TBOATI Part 7 and see what other type of mess we can get ourselves into. It's nowhere near as bad as the cringe we had yesterday, though. To be fair, this is a nice little break for me. The beard of 1,000 irritations. Unreasonable expectations. Hi everyone, and welcome to part 7 of my experience with the beard of 1,000 irritations, or TBOATI for short. If you want to read these stories from the beginning, you can check the description. I hope you did already. He's a sci-fi fan working on his own original world, and he's been hiring me, a writing coach, to help him with his world-building development and get his story written and posted online. This has been pretty frustrating at times, and I'm letting off some steam by writing this. I've changed a few details to protect both the innocent and the bearded. Here is our cast list. OP, hey! OP got an assistant, dang. Robin is OP's assistant. Has a good mathematical mind, and does the more data-biased work while I take the narrative-biased work. TBOATI, yep, he's the star of the show, I guess. To everyone who's read up to this point, thank you so much. I appreciate your support. Last time I talked about TBOATI's boundary dodging. This time I want to talk about something that sometimes crosses over with that. TBOATI's unreasonable expectations. Oh boy, here comes the fun cooker. I'm gonna start with the big one. A little while ago I had a bit of drama in my Telegram group about a fictional National Socialist character who the creator wanted to write about in a story. I'm cautious about showcasing characters or story scenarios that might be interpreted as edgy in my working space because the majority of my client base is genuinely curious about character development, and I sincerely believe that in order to produce good quality characterization, you have to examine all aspects of humanity with as close to an unbiased view as possible. To dehumanize or adopt a dehumanizing position, as these people did/do, creates a conflict of interest in designing that character. That isn't to say that everyone who writes about these people into their story sympathizes with them, of course. A person might write a story with them in it and handle the issues around fascism from an outsider's perspective. I'm just wary about anyone who sees the scum of society in a sympathetic light, as they might be more likely to see some other demographic as less worthy of humanization, which will inevitably lead to disagreements when trying to do the work that I specifically market myself for. Another reason that I'm careful with potentially edgy works is that many of my clients dislike conflict for conflict's own sake, and I know from experience that many members of my clientele or potential client base do shy away from it. If you've grown up gay and surrounded by homophobes, then you probably aren't going to seek out homophobic content, just for the thrill of it. What a thrill it is! God. Chances are you've grown tired of that crap and just want a break, especially when you're looking for stories and games to just enjoy. If I allow flippant, rose-tinted, or kinky representations of homophobia, slavery, misogyny, or any other type of bigotry in my group, the more mild-mannered people will disappear, leaving just a community of edgelords. I'd rather nurture the gentle spirits than the edgelords, especially as the edgelords tend to be young and lack the income to commission me anyways. God, ain't that the truth? You just get that like rebellious teenager phase, I guess. I don't want to stymie discussion of sensitive topics, and I'm well aware that such topics can stimulate helpful discussion, but I am not prepared to host an ideological battleground. I'm trying to run a business here. God damn, you hit a home run with that one, OP. I feel the same. That's why my Discord is like, you know, running the tight ship and everything. We got a place for the edgelords. That's your corner. Go in the corner. But the rest of the server is about good times and vibing. So stop on by, links in the description. So back to the drama around this National Socialist character. It was posted without warning, and as soon as I saw it, I deleted it. And as soon as I did, I got a backlash from somebody who had never shown an interest in becoming a customer and was really only there to talk with his friends, who also never ordered anything. I told him that if he didn't like my values on the subject, then he was welcome to see himself out. He refused and demanded that I explain my position in more depth. So I banned him. Got him! Immediately after that, I got a message from one of the gentler spirits who said that he was impressed with how I had handled that situation. And later I checked in with two other gentler types who hadn't spoken since that character had been posted. Both admitted that they were giving the group a wide berth for a while purely because of that character. There was a lot more of a mess than this. These are just the cliff notes, essentially. It took a week to properly settle everything down again, and by the time I did, I had a few new rules in place. I definitely learned a lot about group conflict management that week. That's what I need to commission you for, OP. Teach me about some of this stuff. I'd been discussing TBOATI's world with him during this time and mentioned what had happened. I wasn't sure if he'd seen the drama or not, but it would have felt like having an elephant in the room if he had and I just didn't mention it. Perhaps this is obvious by now, but TBOATI fancies himself somewhat of an intellectual. Because of course he does. His position on the whole thing was that political alignment is a valid addition to any world because they're so evil that it makes the villains of a world obviously evil by making them those people or by, directly comparing them to those people. I agree that this would be a quick way to establish a group or character's evilness, but to me that's just lazy writing. If you're gonna bother doing any world building at all, wouldn't you work out what makes a group suitably evil, whatever that means to you personally, and build up your own villains as evil in their own right? Why use real-world villains as a cut and paste if you want your own world and your own lore? I admit I'm not the world's best debater, and I had honestly thought that my point about not wanting these characters to be used flippantly would be self-evident. I thought that everyone I knew would consider them to be distasteful and at least understand why I wouldn't want to work with them, especially if it meant working with an edgelord interpretation of them. However, because I didn't have a clear explanation of why I don't like these people, he seemed completely unable to grasp what my problem was with them, and I ended up getting too riled up and just had to leave the conversation incomplete until the next day. The next day, I read the conversation over again and prepared a clearer statement. We agreed that having them in stories isn't necessarily bad, as people may want actual National Socialists in their story and to have them as the designated villain. He still didn't see why I didn't have a cool head about the whole thing. I had to mention that my family, while not those people themselves, were indeed racist and authoritarian, and I didn't want to see more of that inside my working space. As soon as I said that I had personal experience of the types of things that these people did, he backed down. But for as long as he thought I was protecting other people, he disagreed with me. Ugh. I think he was of the mindset of, don't get offended for other people, which does have its merits, but I do have to anticipate what my customers like or dislike and model my business accordingly. Otherwise, I either have no business or one full of the type of content that I personally find it difficult to tolerate. I wish I'd added that last comment to our discussion before closing it, but I think the idea of anticipating other people's needs may have gone completely over his head. Anyways, let's move on to something a bit smaller now. Thank God. I'm probably going to get demonetized for saying that word or things close to that word or alluding to that word too many times, but I guess we'll have to see. YouTube really don't like that word, I'm telling you. One day, early in our working relationship, I was in a conversation with TBOATI. I was talking about some fairly sprawly subject related to the work that I do and wanted to describe it in concise terms. So I did and finished up by saying, "Oh, that's it in a nutshell." TBOATI didn't like that. What? He told me that he'd once had an argument with somebody on the Book of Faces who would use the phrase "in a nutshell" while making his point, so he found the term too toxic to tolerate from anyone. He told me to use the phrase "in summation" instead. Bro, you telling me how I can talk now? Oh God. I hate it. I hate it so much. Wake up, numbnuts. Your anecdotal experience doesn't mean a goddamn thing. Oh, I'm getting heated. That was pretty much how he talked all of the time. In summation. What can I say? This same person tends to say affirmative instead of yes. Yeah, I know them people. They mostly military people, though. I highly doubt TBOATI was ever in the military. I wish I could find my answer to his request, but it was on a platform with a crappy search function that just isn't bringing up that conversation. That might be for the best. I know I thought, no, I'm not doing that, but I might have held off from directly saying so. I think I might have told him, no, but I will say, to sum up. Then there was the, how can I say this? Phantom astrophysics degree? Like an astrophysics degree for ghosts, you know? Oh God, that got me good. Longtime readers will know that I have an assistant, Robin, who does some of the world building and character work I get through the door. I have dyscalculia, and he's naturally good with numbers and subjects that require that, such as physics, so I tend to give him the work that I know I'll struggle with. TBOATI took an interest in making a non-Earth-like planet for his world-building scenario, so I suggested that he work with Robin, who would be better equipped to work with the numbers required to do this sort of work. I said, "Hey, why don't you work with Robin? He's got a good head for figures and should be able to help out with your astrophysics." TBOATI took this to mean, Robin has a degree in astrophysics. Note, I only learned that TBOATI thought this later, after around 6 hours worth of consultations, and after Robin was thoroughly fed up with dealing with this guy. Robin doesn't like being put on the spot and having to analyze data while there's a client waiting on him, so I'd asked TBOATI to provide us with any data that he'd decided on about his planet at least a day prior to the agreed consultation time, plus his intended world-building goals, so that Robin would have time to look at it first and make sure he understood it properly. I did this at Robin's request and explained to TBOATI that this was why I was asking him to do this. He did it, but when Robin started their session, TBOATI dumped a whole lot more secret data on him. After Robin had spent the hour struggling to incorporate all of this into his understanding of TBOATI's planet and talking with TBOATI, with all the general frustrations that tends to entail, he was in a bad mood, and he really needed to let off some steam to me, so I sat and I listened to him. TBOATI sent me a complaint about Robin, which I suspected to be unfair, as I know Robin well, and I know he'll move heaven and earth to make any customers happy, let alone mine. So I invited TBOATI to talk things through with me so I could work out his perspective on what had happened. TBOATI told me how disappointed that he was that Robin hadn't helped him. I asked him how much of a knowledge pool he thought Robin had, and that's when he said he believed Robin was at a degree level. He was happy enough once he realized that Robin isn't, but since then I found a couple of ways to clarify our expertise level on various subjects to our Neckbeard customers. And this leads us nicely into the next issue. TBOATI has quite a few common words and phrases that he tends to use a lot. One of them is the question, what do you think? He'll usually wheel this one out, but immediately after showing you something big and complex that he wants you to read. Perhaps a 5,000 word story or a huge chunk of calculations. To be fair to him, he isn't insistent on getting an immediate answer, but the first time he did this, it sounded to me as if he thought I could assess the 25,000 words he'd sent me instantaneously. I said I'd have to read it first, in the hope that he would understand that reading takes time. And he went into full-on ashamed nice guy apology mode. He still does it often though, so he didn't take it to heart as much as he first appeared to. Robin wasn't as used to TBOATI's "what do you think" habit as I was by the time that consultation happened, and he didn't appreciate the feeling of being rushed. That isn't the only time TBOATI assumed that other people had knowledge or skills that they don't. Does anyone remember the part of this series where I wrote about TBOATI's reluctance to write me a blog post in order to get a discount? Well, he did it eventually. The odd thing is, he told me he was ready to write something before he wrote it, and he also asked me what he should write. After I'd finished internally groaning, how many times did I ask him to write something about the thing that he'd been studying for years? I suggested he ask the Telegram group and see what kind of thing people wanted to know. In hindsight, I realized that this was bound to fail, but it shouldn't have. It really shouldn't have. Here's what went down. He rarely posted in there, so he had no reason to believe that people there knew what he was educated in. Nevertheless, he asked, with no introduction, "What should I write?" Perfect. That's great. No context. Write about a giraffe in a silly hat. That's what I want to hear about. I nudged him to maybe, introduce himself a little, and he did a half introduction, which was kind of misleading about what he was trained in. I just gave up at that point and let him get on with it. Nevertheless, an eager member of the group talked with him for a little while, and it turns out she had no idea what the difference was between cyberpunk, steampunk, biopunk, and dieselpunk. This looked like an ideal topic for him to talk about, since he had brought up these four genres in the first place. Unfortunately, rather than just comparing the genres, he decided to do something complex and technical that probably fell right on its face. I have one more example of TBOATI's general aura of annoy, and then we'll be all up to date. Don't worry though, I've got one other neckbeard like him who I'll start posting about soon. And then someone who shows up all over the place on the neckbeard / nice guy / incel Venn diagram, but I think you guys will have a blast with him anyways. Looking forward to both of those, I tell you what. So TBOATI's final story, at least until he generates more, which I have no doubt he will. One of the small favors I asked TBOATI for during the earlier days of our working relationship was a simple testimonial. Like I said, he's from mainland Europe, so his native language is not English. I'd like to reach the widest audience possible, so I asked him if he'd be happy to provide me with a testimonial in English and then maybe translate it into his native language so that I could put both versions side by side and maybe catch me a few more European clients. He said yes and provided both versions. So far, so simple. But was it though? A couple of days later, he offhandedly mentioned that he had used Google Translate to translate it from English to his native tongue. I facepalmed hard and asked him how come, and he told me that after being at uni for a while and only speaking English there, he had forgotten his original language. I still don't know what to make of that. TLDR, Neckbeard expects everyone to be objective for the sake of his own creative freedom. And there is a part 8. I think that will wrap up TBOATI, but we'll have to get to it on another day. That last bit is super sus, bro. Forgot your original language? Is that honestly possible? Especially if you're living in the country where that language, like, permeates? I don't know, dude. I don't think I can buy it. Maybe his whole life is made up. Maybe he just wanted to seem like an interesting European gentleman, and actually he's living in the deep south with his girlfriend or something, and it's all a ruse. But no, I suppose he would have to be far too clever to actually pull that off. That would require a level of creative writing and creative thinking that we have seen he clearly lacks. It has been showcased endlessly. God, what an absolute weirdo. What a specimen, man. It definitely wore a hole through my soul. I gotta say that much. I can definitely see OP getting frustrated, but we will revisit TBOATI at a later date, wrap him up, and hopefully send him off for good, because if I didn't know why he was called the Beard of 1,000 Irritations going into the series, it has been made so clear to me now. Oh, my brain feels like shredded cabbage, man. But I did enjoy myself, and I thank you so much for writing, OP. I hope that you guys enjoyed yourselves as well. If you did, I hope that you leave that big like, maybe comment or subscribe if you haven't yet. Dang, maybe share the video around. I also hope you'll check out the links in the description. Darkly Studios on Twitter did the character animations for this video. You can find his link in the description. Really great with the commish. We got my personal subreddit, r/ReddX Reads. Teespring if you're trying to rock the merch. Wifey's channel, Mr. and Mrs. ReddX. And we also got the Amazon affiliate links. Currently it goes to my microphone. But if you click on through by basically anything else after that click, I get like a little percentage, which is pretty cool. It's a nice gesture. I appreciate it. We've also got social medias. We got the Twitter and the Facebook and the Discord. Oh, and how could I almost forget my gorgeous, wonderful, beautiful, generous patrons? Yes, indeed. I'd like to thank them all, but especially ZeroMMX, Lady Nix, Robert Waits, Cider Drinker, Tato Ferret, The Last Shinobi, Mark211, Aaron W, Mitch, John Hero, Candy Sora, Fire Drake, Little Lone Wolf, Miss Monday, Silent Revolver, JM Coon, Leon Embers, TSM Kirby, Redwind, Synaptic Boomstick, Jerry, Staples, Yeet, Cake Jerry, that's a different Jerry, Nat One Nick, Tamago, Jelly Donut, Liverson, James Cook, and Papa Jesus. Thank you guys so much for helping to support the channel. I don't know how this one's gonna go. We said, like, you know, a lot of words that YouTube doesn't like and stuff like that, but, you know, fingers crossed. What are you gonna do? I dodged it as best I could. One day Patreon will be big enough that I don't even need to worry about monetization, but that day is not quite yet. So thank you guys so much for supporting. If anybody else can help these lovely people out in supporting the channel monetarily, that's absolutely huge. I thank you very much in advance. But if you can't right now, don't sweat it too hard, friends. I just appreciate you coming on through, hanging out with me, and I hope that you come on back and hang out with me again tomorrow, because really the views is how my beard stays so buttered. Always remember to keep yourself safe out there, wash your hands, and also take some time out and do something that you personally enjoy today. Maybe watching some old ReddX videos. Hey, we got all kinds of stuff that you ain't seen yet. Maybe, probably, I hope. I definitely appreciate it, you guys. Always remember that you are loved, you are worthy, and you definitely deserve it. I shall see you in the next one. And until then, friends, bye-bye.